Epic comebacks. The Cowboys on the receiving end of one and not the way they want to be. The Colts on the receiving end of another. And was that the last we're going to see of Matt Ryan? And of a weekend of games that really nobody cares about because these games kind of suck this week, we do get to and on against a surging Aaron Rodgers. And I use the term surging lightly. And we'll talk about the problems going on in the NFC North as we get closer to the postseason. To bring it all together with me is PFN's senior NFL analyst. That is the great Mr. Trey Wingo.
What's up, dude? Yes. Can the Packers be surging with a win? Or is it, what are they at, 2 in a row? What is it? We'll see. I think the surge might come to a crashing halt as the Dolphins are back home for the first time in a month.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Sir Aaron will be taking his talents to South Beach, and we'll see how well he's able to utilize them. But that being said, Trey, you got a party going on back there? What's going on there?
We're just doing a little cooking. We got stuff going on. We're just having a blast here, and we're lovely Palm Springs. Family.
Folks should know you're not in your East Coast compound. You are now safely on the West Coast, the best coast.
Correctamundo, and I will be here for the foreseeable future. Here and then farther. That's
right. And you have to remind me when you go to the further part of our nation's borders here. You'll have to remind me because that's another time zone shift I have to work with.
That is correct. It's going to be a 5-hour time difference, so plan accordingly.
Well, it's been 3 years, Trey. I haven't learned the time zones, but you're here with me. We can help our audience learn what's going on in Week 16 because it is time to learn. And we're going to get started with one of those teams that we just were talking about, and that is the Green Bay Packers. Now, for this entire segment, for the last month and a half, we've been talking about, are these teams that we believe in, that we have doubts with, or that we need to learn more about? And the Green Bay Packers, Trey, they are they're doing well, but they don't seem to be doing well enough, and they're taking on a Dolphins team that is desperate for a victory to stay in the playoff hunt. But the Packers need one too. They need one too. Are they going to get it?
Well, look, this whole thing is believe, doubt, or need more. So I'm just going to tell you up front, and we can do this by each one. Every one of the teams that we're talking about, because I see all three teams, and yes, Bolivier 23. How about those Lions? Yeah, Lions are freaking great right now. They won 6 of 7, by the way. The only loss in that stretch was a game on Thanksgiving against Buffalo that they probably should have won. They hadn't messed up some clock management there, but that's a separate issue because you want to know about these three teams. Every one of these three teams, I'm going to spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you it's the GIF of Adam Driver from the latest Star Trek movie. More. I need to see more on all these guys because I don't believe in any of them.
All right, well, we are going to talk about the Lions, by the way. We're going to talk about the whole NFC North when Arif Hasan joins us in the next segment because the Lions are part of what we're going to talk about with that division. But so are the Packers, Trey, and they're going to South Beach. They're going to play the Dolphins. The Dolphins coming off a game against the Bills.
Did I say Star Trek? DJ Dirty Jerry said Star Wars. Did I say Star Trek? I absolutely meant it as Star Wars. So if I said Star Trek, that's on me.
You did say Star Trek.
I did. So sorry, DJ Dirty J. Just so you know, I knew it was Star Wars. It was the young Darth Vader. I got that. I understand.
Okay. That. All right.
So I meant to say Star Wars, and somehow I said Star Trek. So there you go. Thank you, DJ Dirty J, for correcting me on that because that was absolutely what I meant was Star Wars.
All right. DJ Dirty J is an OG of this show. He's been here with us since day one.
And he says all is forgiven. See, it's the holiday season.
He knows what's up. All right, let's get to it, right? Because you got Aaron Rodgers. All right, he's apparently using the wrong hand signals or whatever that kerfluffle was this week with that article from.
There's a lot to get into. If you want to go down that road, it's like that's something you guys should have worked out a long time ago. Should
maybe
not
if
be
you were in
up
OTAs.
In week 16. Maybe if you showed up in the offseason and gave a bleep, to me, And I know I'm putting the cart before the horse or whatever metaphor you want to use. Like what the end of the regular season is going to be somewhat interesting to Green Bay. The offseason is going to be very interesting for Green Bay because I just got a feeling, guys, that I think Aaron Rodgers ain't sticking around for another year. And if that's the case, then they had to pay Aaron Rodgers, which cost them Devontae Adams, and now both Rodgers and Adams are gone. That's going to be a hard one for the Packers to say, love you, number 12.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about this with Arif a couple of weeks ago, right? About what do they do? Do they trade Jordan? Do they trade Aaron? And what's interesting to me, Trey, is that this I don't see a pathway for them. Mostly be Olivier 23 on Twitch because of your alliance. I don't see a pathway for the Packers to the postseason. And
well, I mean, there is a path. They just can't lose.
Well, right? Well, and that's exactly it. And I just don't see how that shakes out for them. And it starts with this week. Do you see a way that they win this game against the Dolphins?
Well, the Dolphins aren't playing great, but yeah, I mean, I can see a way. Do I logically expect that to happen? The answer is no. The Dolphins really, honestly, impressed me a lot in that loss.
They did, right? I said the same
thing. They didn't turtle, to use a hockey term, right? They went up there and gave it their best shot. And, one of my good friends who is a big Dolphins fan was like, I can't believe that PI call that gave him the game. I'm like, yeah, it was the definition of PI. Unlike the end of the Giants game where they just decided to swallow the flag. And, the Giants secondary did to that receiver what the sisters did to Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, and no one seemed to care. So, by the way, that's a line from my man, Mark Schlereth. He uses that all the time, but it made perfect sense. Like that whole sequence. And by the way, you talk about how great this weekend was. We should talk about how horrendous the officiating was this past week. Top to bottom, starting Thursday night with once again another bogus roughing the passer call on Thursday against Nick Bosa that's prevented a pick six that probably should have ended that game a long time ago. Through the entire week, maybe the worst officiating I've ever seen for an entire week of NFL football.
Let me give people a peek behind the curtain for the show real quick for the production. I put the script together and I'll shoot you some ideas and you'll shoot me back like, hey, we definitely got to talk about this, whatever. I feel like every week I've either wanted to send you or we've done it on the show. I want to talk about the officiating and how bad it is. And at some point,
awful.
I always have to check myself because you pointed this out to me. It's like, am I just being like sour grapes about this? But no, Trey, objectively, the NFL officiating is so bad. And to me, that presents a problem the cozier the league gets with sports betting. Yeah. Where the officials are impacting not just outcomes of games now, but the money going in and out of people's wallets. That's going to be a problem, I think, sooner rather than later.
Well, listen, as someone who works for a sports betting company.
Well, which one is that again?
That would be
sure.
Caesar Sports. Caesar Sportsbook. I do think I just think it's bad. There's no, to me, there's no conspiracy theory here. It's just that they're terrible. I've told you this before, and I'll share it with the viewers in case I can't remember if I've said it on this platform or not, but there was a former NFL official who is now working in television.
Oh, yeah.
And, I watched games with this person, and he said, Trey, when I was officiating, I thought we were great. I thought we did an amazing job. And then I watched the game the way you and all the fans watched the game, and we're terrible. He said, we are terrible at this.
Yeah.
And, that's why, look, I will always say give these guys a sky judge, because a sky judge, a ref sees the game linearly like this. We see it 360. We see it sort of digitally in a metaverse. I hate to use that because you're Brediverse tag, but we see it in that way, right? We see it in this way. They see it in this way. And if they were able to see what we see, I think they would change things dramatically. And I just wish the NFL would have the big ones to approve the sky judge so we could get through this problem and it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and not to beleaguer the point here, but I want to agree with you.
No, you beleaguer that point. This point is
clear.
This is a point that needs to be beleaguered.
I want to be very clear. In no way am I suggesting that there's some, nefarious, in the shadows manipulation of game scores. I don't think that. I just think they're bad. I think it's a skill issue. And you could chalk it up to everything that you just said, which you should, because it's 100% accurate. You could chalk it up to them not being full-time and being part-time officials.
Which, by the way, for people that don't know, that's the referee's choice. The NFL tried to institute mandatory full-time referees a couple of years ago, and the refs were like, hell no. And people say, well, why is that? This is a side gig for every one of them. they all have a different job or several other jobs.
Right.
Like Gene Steratore, before he retired and went to CBS, was coaching college football, was refereeing college football, college basketball. He did a million things. A lot of these guys are like Ed Hockley was a lawyer.
I was going to say, wasn't he a lawyer?
He was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And there's lots of bankers and lawyers and finance guys that do this as a side hustle. And they're like, I'm not giving up everything else for this.
Right.
So when people say, well, why aren't there full-time officials? That's the official's choice and the officials union's choice. So people need to understand that.
Yeah, and it's something hopefully the league figures out, because I think that's also a massive part of it. But that being said, let's talk about another team that we want to figure out here that we need to learn more about. Where I don't know that officiating played a large role in this game at all. But it is alarming at the rate that the defense is getting worse after being so dominant early in the season. That's the Dallas Cowboys losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And really
more. I need to see more.
Yeah, so let's figure that out, right? Because the Cowboys, the Jags are surging. You astutely pointed out on the show last week that
they're going to win that division.
They're going to win that division. They have the real shot.
Yeah. So here's why we need to see more in the Cowboys. First of all, I expect them to beat the Eagles this weekend, and I'll explain that in a second. I do. But when people say, why don't people believe in the Cowboys? The Jags game is exactly why. They were up 14-0, 21-7, 24-10, 27-10, and found a way to gack it away. And I'm not even talking about the Dak Prescott interception. Look, all interceptions are not on the quarterback. He hit Noah Brown in the hands. Noah Brown's hands just happened to bat the ball up in the air to Rayshon Jenkins, who said, thank you, and became, I think, the first player in NFL history with 18 tackles and 2 interceptions in one game. He had a hell of a game. But you can't trust Dallas because they'll do this, right? They went to the wire against the Texans. They go into Minnesota, beat them 40-3, one of the worst losses at home in Vikings franchise history. And then they sort of just play with their food for a few weeks and mess around a little bit. And then even forget the fact that they let the Jaguars in, because Jaguars are a good team. Game management, end of the game, it's 3rd and 11. And really, you run the clock, you eat some clock, or you force the Jaguars to use their timeouts. Kellen Moore or Mike McCarthy, I'm not sure who dialed up this play, long throw down the sidelines, out of bounds, incomplete. Clock stops. They just run the ball there and eat some clock and force Jacksonville to burn a timeout. This game doesn't get to overtime. Yeah. You're not seeing the game tying kick at the end of it. And then we have the crazy situation that led to the Jaguars winning. So I need to see more from Dallas, because this is who they are. They give you, like, their best is really good, but you have no idea each and every week if their best shows up. Now, here's why I think they have all kinds of hello. There we go. Hello. Here's why I think we have all kinds of issues for the Eagles this week. The Jalen Hurts thing, by the way, I don't think he should play, just because you need one win to lock up home field advantage as well as the NFC East. You just need 1 and 3. Okay. If he's compromised, don't put him out there, because once you win, you're probably going to rest him, and you don't want to rest him for 4 weeks, with the last 2 weeks of the regular season and the bye week, and then they play in the divisional round. You don't want to do that. Right. So I would absolutely, if he's not 100,000,000%, I would rest him for 2 reasons. One, Gardner Minshew is a very capable backup. Like Gardner Minshew,
best in the league, I think.
He's the perfect backup quarterback. You feel very comfortable with him going in there, but you don't want him in for 7 games. Right. Which is, like Gardner hates it, because everybody would take him on their team just not to start. Right. They would take it. But I think the Cowboys are going to play well. I mean, historically, since 2018, Dallas home division games, and that's what we're talking about. It's a home division game.
Yeah.
Since 2018, they're 13-1 straight up, 11-3 against the spread. Wow. They've beaten and covered against the Eagles 4 straight times, and the last 3 all by at least 20 points. Now, I get it. It's a different. If it's a different team. You have A.J. Brown. You have potentially Jalen Hurts, and all that. It's a different team. But there's a reason the line went from 2 to 5.5 or 6 at one point at Caesars in favor of the Cowboys, and finally settled at 4.5 because, Sirianni and Jalen Hurts are playing that game. Oh, I may play. I'm going to try and play, to try and manipulate things. I don't think he's going to play, and I think the Cowboys will hold on to some hope. But then the Eagles have 2 games just to win 1, and everything's good, and that's probably better for them anyway. And it's also better for them to lose a game. Did I explain this last week or not?
That was where I was going to go with this. Is this according to what you pointed out, which is the teams that go 15-1 or better basically in the regular season
don't win
in the postseason.
They don't win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The five best teams in the last 25 years, the Patriots undefeated team and 4 or 5 15-1 teams, 0% of them won a Super Bowl. It's in the Eagles' best interest to lose a game going into the postseason.
If you can do that and rest your quarterback at the same time, that seems to be the ideal scenario. Look, let's stay in the NFC East here, because on the flip side of this, we talk about why the Cowboys maybe don't have our trust and game management issues with Mike McCarthy. That's an evergreen tweet right there. But the New York Football Giants, Trey, they won ugly against the Commanders. Again,
they won fugly. They didn't win ugly. They won fugly.
But they're winning, and they
won this week. They won this week.
That's kind of where I want to go here, because the Vikings, the biggest comeback in NFL history last week, but they also got down 33-0 to Matt Ryan's grandfather and the Indianapolis Colts. So my point here is this is maybe another winnable game for the New York Giants. One they at least will be competitive in. Do they have an opportunity to squeeze into the playoffs here too?
Right now they're in playoff position, and we'll talk about the fraudulent Vikings with Arif in a little bit, I'm sure. I did enjoy putting out the potential fraud alert screenshot when they were down 33-0. And if it was anybody else but the Colts and my friend Jeff coaching, that game is over. There were some serious problems that Matt Ryan had, and there were some, like Jeff and I have talked about it, some things that he would have absolutely done differently there. But as for the Giants, I jokingly texted with a former Giant because he was like, together blue, we believe. And I said, guys, like the refs gave you that game. And he goes 8-5-1. And I texted him back, 8 fraud and done is what I said. I don't believe in the Giants. I need to see a ton more. Like, I think Brian Daboll has done an amazing job with not a lot. Like, they don't have a bunch of ways to win. And he has instilled in them the belief that they can win. But yeah, I look, if again, going back to the officiating, Terry McLaurin lines up, looks at the ref and says, am I good? And the ref goes, and then throws the flag on what would have been the game-winning touchdown. And we talked about the pass interference, which was so incredibly blatant. Dean Blandino went on the 33rd team and said, yeah, this was horrendous. That absolutely was the definition of pass interference, and it should have been called. And the Giants would still be looking for their first division win of the year if those things had not taken place. Yeah. I give them all the credit in the world, but I'm not like, together blue, all in.
Oh, sure.
This is the Eli Manning Giants of Super Bowl 42 and Super Bowl 46. Hell no.
Do they have a pathway, Trey? Like,
they do. They have a path. I mean, everybody in the NFC East has a path. They're all in the playoffs right now. Literally every team in the NFC East is still in the playoffs. So that'll whittle itself out as we get a little closer to the end of the season. And like right now, let me pull that up real quick. I was just looking at there. No, that's the teams. But we talk about the Vikings in a second. Yeah. Right now, all 4 teams in the NFC East are in, and it's the Seattle Seahawks and the Detroit Lions sitting behind that final 7 spot. And I think the Seahawks will fall out of that because I think the Chiefs are home for the first time in a month, and I think they're going to open up a can on a Seattle defense. By the way, Seattle's run defense, have you looked at the numbers recently?
Yeah, well, I actually just put up 100 on them the other day.
On who?
On the Seahawks defense, me as a runner.
Oh, I was about to say I thought you put 100 down, like betting on the Seahawks.
No. I with my bum Achilles just rushed for 100 yards on that defense.
They've given up 160 yards in 5 straight games. That's the first time in Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's been in the NFL. Forget his time in the USC. He's been in the NFL as an assistant or head coach 29 years. 29 seasons. He's never had a team give up 160 rushing yards in 5 straight games. If you have Isaiah Pacheco on your fantasy team and you are in the playoffs, you should feel pretty good. Oh, yeah. This is going to be a Kansas City game where the moniker is wide fly when you can drive. Yeah. Mahomes throws for 25, has 25 or more attempts, then Andy Reid is drunk. And he should.
Andy Reid in the run game is.
Well, I know it happens, but I mean, and look at McKinnon. Like McKinnon was great against the Texans too. So the Texans were a terrible run team, and they figured that out. And I think that they'll just pound the rock against those guys and let Mahomes do his MVP type stuff. And we should have that discussion because, brother, it ain't close. who the MVP of this league is. It is not close, and I can sell it for you, and I can explain it to you. You just have to want to believe it, because it is not freaking close.
It's not. And real quick, shout out to offensive line coach for the Chiefs, Coach Heck, Andy Heck. He called the game-winning play for Jerick McKinnon against the Texans, and the week before called the game-winning play for Isaiah Pacheco. So, Andy, keep listening to Coach Heck.
There you go.
That being said, before our good buddy Arif is in the studio, he is waiting to come in so he can talk about the alleged fraud of the Minnesota Vikings and others. But before we do that, I just want to point out there that on all three of these teams, Trey, I have all three of these teams losing this week, with a caveat, obviously, with Dallas Philly. My betting model, the behavior bets model, has the Eagles winning by a point if Jalen Hurts plays. If he doesn't play, Dallas wins by at least 4 points pretty much every time you run it. So,
by the way, real quickly, just so you know, and just how crazy this is, even if Jalen Hurts plays, it was a 2-point spread. Now it's, like I said, down to 4.5. It's the first time all year the Eagles have been underdogs. They've been favored in every game going except for this one. Yeah, and
like I said, if Jalen Hurts plays, I have them winning. I have them winning by a point. This past week, week 15, my model went 24-6. Went up 13.4 units with a 76 return on investment.
So now you're essentially just like Rich then, right?
I'm doing quite well. Done. So
well
I would
done.
Tell you guys, and I'm not making this up, you can all see this. You track it on Pickett. Track me on Pickett Sports. You could tell the model. Make sure you track your own bets when you go to Pickett. It's free to download, easy to use. And the best thing to do, I placed 30 bets this weekend, and Pickett kept track for me on everything. And that's how I can tell you why I'm doing so well, because it's right here. I just pull it up and it's there. You should be doing that too. It's free. Download Pickett. The link is in the comments. The promo code is PFN365. Pickett Sports. Make sure you do it. It's easy, simple. I only bet at Caesars. You don't need to be betting at multiple sports books. Bet at Caesars, but track it all right there at Pickett. PFN 365 in the comments. Now, in the studio, we're going to bring in our good friend, Arif Hasan. That is PFN's lead NFL analyst. Arif, who, for those who don't know, but who doesn't know.
Arif apparently didn't pay his power bill. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah. I was just going to say, Arif,
can we get you a candle there, buddy? You all right?
Are you okay? You want us to light you a torch or something?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
No.
Regards to my brother's lighting situation for this house that he is currently in the middle of repairing. How about that?
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's completely fair. Like every other time you come into us, it's a great studio look. You've got the sound panels and the microphone. Now you literally look like you're being held hostage in someone's closet.
If you, I mean, in all seriousness, Arif, if you are, blink twice and we'll help you.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know if this is a hostage video, and we will send someone.
Just to be clear, we're
do
pro
that for
help.
you.
If
sure. Yeah, once I learn Morse code through the blinks, you'll figure it out.
There it is. Well, look, Morse code. I know the Norse code is something that you are quite.
Hold on. Just hold on. That's standing up. That's well done.
Thank you.
So much better than Bucka Brady.
Trey,
from Morse code to Norse code.
Trey, the more we spend time together, you rub off on me, my friend. I'm learning from the greatest. Now, Arif, we the problem, this is our second segment. We talk about an ongoing problem in the NFL, and in this case, it's the NFC North. The Vikings are seemingly a fraudulent 11-3. Mm-hmm. The Green Bay Packers, and I know it's weird to crap on them as they're coming off the biggest comeback win in NFL history. The Green Bay Packers have a win. They're still in the playoff hunt. The Detroit Lions
against the Colts. Like it was.
Let's
be honest. Any other team up. There's not another team.
We'll talk about
literally.
it. Yeah.
I think the Texans would have finished off Minnesota. I really believe that. I mean, look at the last two. Look at the last 2 weeks for the Texans. The Cowboys had to score at the end of the game to win. They took the Chiefs to overtime. And again, we can have the discussion about why this once again proves there's no debate over who the MVP of the league is. There's no debate. But yeah, any other team except the Colts would have finished off the Vikings. Let's just be honest about it.
And you've got the Detroit Lions seemingly in the lead of the pack to get into the postseason from the division. Arif, you've spent so much time covering the Vikings and studying the Vikings. Which team concerns you more? The Vikings themselves the Lions or the Packers?
Well, I guess I mean, I guess the Vikings have secured, the division, right? So it's not as if the Lions can take them out of that. But, were we to like try and identify the most difficult matchup for another team to go up against in the playoffs, I think would be the Lions. I'd be much more worried about going up against the Lions.
Let me paint you a picture here, because it's funny you say that. If okay, these teams win, if the Lions win this week and the Vikings win this week, you have the Lions as the 7 seed and the Vikings as the 2 seed playing each other wild card weekend.
That's a tough one. Like the fact that home field advantage means even less now than it did like 3-4 years ago. It would be an even more difficult matchup for the Vikings to take on, even though they've got home field advantage. No, I think the Lions are a fantastic team. They're taking advantage of the fact that they've got all kinds of talent. They've got talent up front, offensively and defensively. They just added essentially Jameson Williams to the receiving core, which is now looking more and more impressive. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown has like a Pro Bowl case ahead of him. So there's a lot going on with the Lions. I'm still not a believer in Jared Goff, but the rest of that team is doing such an excellent job that, it's kind of bringing that forward. And Jared Goff is the kind of quarterback, that can be carried. I mean, there's some quarterbacks that are like average to below average that can't be carried, right? Like say Jameis Winston, right? He's just going to make a mistake and you're just going to, lose the game because of that. Jared Goff is not that kind of quarterback. He's not going to make the plays himself that are going to help you win the games. But if the rest of the team kind of pulls you forward, he's probably not going to lose you the game. Probably.
It's like a Jimmy G.
Yeah, no, exactly. I would say he's kind of like a poor man's Jimmy G, right? Because Garoppolo is probably the best at being a caretaker quarterback. But Goff, in the right circumstances with the right offense, and Ben Johnson's coordinating a great offense for him. I think that is kind of the example that where you'd want to maybe invest a little bit less at quarterback in order to get kind of the rest of that team, healthy and ready. So, I think the Lions are certainly the most dangerous team. It was a really difficult game for the Vikings to take them on, a couple of weeks ago. And I think that would be the most difficult game they've got up ahead of them, which makes sense, it's the playoffs, but it would be the most difficult game they've got up ahead of them for the rest of the schedule. It's going to be kind of difficult to get a good read on who the Vikings are as they finish out the schedule, in part because the other team that we're talking about, the Packers, I don't think the world of, if I'm being honest.
No, there's no reason for you to think that way. The Vikings, like they finally got their defense down below 400 yards a game, giving up by playing the Indianapolis Colts. I mean,
great job, guys.
Yeah, I mean, and I know defense sort of takes a back seat these days, although it's been a resurgence in defense this year. Scoring is way down than over the last couple of years. But to me, that Vikings defense has to be concerning for anybody who's feeling.
It's a huge liability. It's a huge liability. And I'll say this, you keep on mentioning that the comeback was against the Colts. I think that, having the greatest, comeback of all time also means playing against the greatest choke job of all time, right? Like that's correct. Those are two sides of the same coin. And I think that it makes sense to kind of view the Colts as a team that is, capable of that, right? I would say that this game is not the best example of why the Vikings are necessarily fraudulent. I think the way that they gave up those 33 points in the first half, a lot of that is just kind of fluky behavior type stuff.
Correct.
That's 100%. Did you see, I put that in our
special teams issues. Yes, absolutely. Two scooping scores that were negated by horrible
officiating. Right. Another like a 40 or 51-yard punt return taken away by a phantom penalty as well. I mean, there was a lot there where the Vikings, you quote unquote should have been, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more ahead of the Colts. But you take a look at the games before that one, and I think you've got a pretty good case, right? The Vikings have they're 10-0, 11-0 in one score. I've lost track, but they're undefeated in one score games. And in these close games, a lot of it is
Houston Oilers, by the way, for the record. There's 78 Houston Oilers, 10 straight. Yeah. Or not 10 straight, but 10 one-score wins. Yeah.
Did they win the Super Bowl that year?
They did not.
Huh, interesting. Okay.
Well, we talked on the show. If you look at point differential, the Lions have are 3 points better, +5 in point differential than the Minnesota Vikings at +2.
Yeah, and you take a look at the kinds of statistics that help you project performance going forward. Nothing's good. Football's weird, but the better ones include stuff like point differential that are a little bit better than something like win-loss record, right? It is really difficult to tell how good a team is based off of essentially a sample of 14, 15 games, we've only got one data point to extract from those games. If you got more data points, which is the number of scores in a game, that helps you out a little bit more. If you take a look at some other metrics that have more data points, things like yards per play or points per drive or things like that, which are a little bit even more predictive, right, than point per. I mean, the Lions are better than the Vikings in those measures as well, right? And it's difficult to get a good understanding of how the Vikings are winning, but it is easy to understand that this isn't likely to continue, right? And, it's tough because, I say this on my podcast, Norse Code, right? I say this on my podcast. I say this on, and other appearances. I write it down, and a lot of the people that follow me are Vikings fans because that's where I come from, and they get like really upset and angry that I talk about these things.
They are so mad at you.
They're so mad. And I get it, right? Like, oh, we're winning. Why can't we enjoy it? And it's like, look, I'm not telling you can't enjoy it. Enjoy it, man. Have a beer. Like, have fun with you. I don't care, right? My job is
to manage your expectations.
Yeah,
just manage your expectations.
Yeah. So, these are great wins. They're fantastic to watch. It's exciting football. The Vikings are one of the most exciting teams in the NFL to watch right now. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily one of the best teams. And it is difficult to trust a quarterback that's not having his most efficient season. In fact, I think it's his least efficient season. And is in a lot of these close games against teams that they should absolutely be blowing out. They should have blown out the Washington Commanders. They won 20-17, right?
The Bears earlier this year, they were up big on the Bears, and it came down to a great play by Dantzler late to sort of.
Absolutely. Against the Saints. I mean, we talked about this before. Against the Saints, they forced a fumble on a punt return because Chris Boyd was former teammates with Amir Smith-Marset when Amir Smith-Marset was with the Vikings, and he knows how he's going to carry the ball, right? Yeah. Like he said after the game, like, yeah, I knew how he was carrying the ball. We knew how to force fumbles against him. And it's like, oh, well, I'm sure that'll happen again. Right. Like, I don't know. Like, a lot of these are instances where it's just like they had an amazing special teams play that's unlikely to repeat itself, like a muffed punt that they recover. On the flip side of that, Jalen Reagor has muffed punts and has fumbled punts and has never lost the ball. The Vikings have always recovered that. How long is that going to continue? Right.
Correct.
And so it is difficult to like kind of trust the Vikings are their record, but I also don't have any difficulty believing that they're kind of a good team too, right? Like that's not really the question. The question is are they as good as 11-win teams? And I think the answer is no.
Trey, I have a question, but real quick, Arif, to your point, the Minnesota Vikings and for my betting model, one of the metrics I use is points scored per minute of possession time, right? Mm-hmm. And the Vikings are number 2 in the league after their comeback win against the Colts this week, actually supplanting the Detroit Lions, who were number 2 behind Dallas. But on defense, Minnesota gives up the 5th most points per minute of opponent possession time. And Detroit is number 2 in the league on defense as well. So goes to say that the Vikings are closer to a 7-7 team than they are 11-4 in that regard. But Trey, we talked about the Packers a lot tonight, and I want to just bring them into the mix here. What is it about the Packers that doesn't have us talking about them the way we're talking about the Vikings and the Lions? What are they missing? Even though win-loss wise, they're right behind the Lions and not so far away from that record. What don't they have? What are we not seeing from them?
Well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers sort of alluded to it. Still not complete trust in the receiving core. Right. That's let's start there. Their defense hasn't been as good as a lot of people thought it was going to be this year. Aaron hasn't been as good. Like I know it's easy to pin it on the receivers, and Christian Watson is coming on and playing great. Aaron hasn't played well. He hasn't played well, and some of that is the injuries, and some of that is the brand new receiving core. They just, I get it, right? Like right now they're 1 game behind, but before the 2-game winning streak, they were 4-8. And the Lions were 6-7 and 5-7, and it just, to me, it just doesn't feel like the same Packers from the last 2 years where Aaron Rodgers was the MVP, and that they'll figure it out. I think this is still very much a work in progress. And to me, it just doesn't feel like this is the same team we've seen over the last couple of years. And obviously it isn't because of Devontae Adams and a bunch of other reasons. But I see things that are going well for the Lions, right? I see the team buying into what Dan Campbell is doing. Hell, you throw it to Penei Sewell to seal a win on 4th and inches. How freaking great is that? You trade away
against the Vikings.
TJ. Yeah, exactly. You trade away TJ Hawkinson And then you have a tight end who makes his first catch of the game, which basically seals the game for the Lions. That win by the Lions over the Jets, to me, was their best win of the year because they just come off a game, like you said, against the Vikings indoors at their building against a defense which gives up a lot of yards. Then they go outdoors on the cold, to a Jets team that has gone 9 straight games without giving up a 300-yard receiver, a 100-yard rusher, or a 100-yard receiver, and they manufacture a way to win. I just see more signs of optimism with the way the Lions have won 6 of 7 games. They won 3 straight, lost that close game on Thanksgiving to Buffalo, which they probably should have won. If Badgley doesn't miss his first kick of the year,
right?
And then some questionable clock management on that final drive of regulation. I never understand that shot play down the sidelines with your third best wide receiver. It just feels like there's more optimism and things are generating in a more positive way for the Lions than they are for the Packers.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, you take a look at a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, and to understand kind of like how he operates as a quarterback. I'm not really great with analogies, but you take an F1 driver and you know that they're very familiar with what their car can do, right?
Correct.
They know what these particular tires will do when they turn at this particular speed.
Trust.
Yeah, and it's the trust. But the thing is, you put an average F1 driver into a random F1 car. They're not going to be as good, but they're going to kind of adapt and try and figure out as the race continues. And Aaron Rodgers seems to not be doing that. He has very specific things that he wants to do when he puts the ball on a spot. He has very specific things about where he wants a receiver to run, when that is outside of the confines of the called play, right? And a lot of times for quarterbacks and receivers that works. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce have been doing it for years, right? Where the route suddenly stops. There's not a playbook in the world that tells the tight end to stop the route against that particular defense on that particular play with that footwork, and Mahomes already has the ball out to that location, right? Yeah. And Rodgers wants that, but is not adapting his game to the realization that that's not happening. Mahomes has, outside of Kelce, an almost entirely new receiving core, and he's making it work with them.
Does that make him valuable to you, Trey, Patrick Mahomes?
Look, I'm glad you brought this up, right? Because
the next piece I'm publishing is on this MVP debate about Mahomes and Tua and Jalen, and a little bit of Josh Allen because lip service, but he's not being as seriously considered as those three.
It's just, I mean, I'm glad you steered it in this direction because I just, by any metric, like, how do you want to do this? Like, I think we can all agree that Tyreek Hill is top 2 receiver in the NFL this year.
He's
right.
Yeah.
That's fair. Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, right? That's it. Right? Those are the top 2. Okay.
Yeah.
So you lose this player to a bunch of no names wide receivers, like you just said. Like, Juju's cute. He's fine. He's whatever. But there's a reason he was available for a 1-year contract.
He's cute.
I mean, it's nice. He's available for a 1-year contract for a reason.
He's good to have.
Cutie pie.
Yeah.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the Packers did not want. They did not want him.
Well, if you ask them now, I'm sure they would.
Right, but they made him available. They didn't want him.
Yeah,
and he hasn't been great either. So, like, you lose arguably the most dynamic player in football.
Mm-hmm.
In football.
Certainly the most defense-changing player, right?
Correct.
Yes.
And you have a quarterback who has a 400 passing yard lead on everybody, has a 5 touchdown pass lead on everybody. And wait for it. They're the number 1 scoring offense in football, and they're the number 1 offense in football in terms of yards generated. I don't know how else to tell you this. People are talking about Jalen Hurts as an MVP candidate. Why? Because they got A.J. Brown to go along with Devontae Smith. People are talking about Tua before this losing streak because he has Tyreek Hill now to go away and go alongside Jalen Waddle and Gesicki and all this other stuff. This guy lost that guy. And they said, we do not care. We will still do the things we're going to do with people you have not heard of, okay? Sky Moore has been irrelevant in this offense. Now, I'm hopeful that he will get better because I think there's potential there. Mm-hmm. But he's like, if Mahomes isn't the quarterback for the Chiefs on Sunday, they lose by 14 to that team.
Yeah.
Like, he completed at one point 20 straight passes. I think he only had 5 incompletions, threw for 340 yards, threw for 2, and ran for 1. Like, every other quarterback that we're talking about in this discussion, and you want to put Josh Allen in there as well, they keep adding things. They keep taking things away from this guy, and he is kicking your ass. Okay.
Do you want to hear the case for Jalen Hurts? I don't think it's the case that everyone else is making, but the case
go for it.
I'd like to make.
Yeah.
So Jalen Hurts has the best supporting cast out of all of these guys, right?
Without question.
Right.
And the best offensive line in football and a really good defense. None of those things. Let's focus on the Chiefs' offensive line is good, but it's not Eagles good.
Let's focus on one of the words in the MVP award. Valuable, right?
Okay.
Jalen Hurts' cap hit is $1.3 million. How are they able to sign somebody like AJ Brown? How are they able to develop that? He provides more return on investment than Patrick Mahomes, who is clearly returning on investment. Don't get me wrong, right? But a $1.3 million cap hit allows them to bring in somebody like
hold on one sec, Arif. Mines_Al.
Watching he's all in on this. By the way, this is not recorded. We're doing this live.
Yeah, I just want to let you know this is not recorded. We're just
I get it. Make a QB award, an MVP award. Yes, that's why we created the Offensive Player of the Year. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's the way it is.
So,
the MVP goes to the best quarterback on the best team.
If I had my choice, the MVP award would ignore the naming of the award entirely, and it would just give it to the best player in the league. I would much prefer that, right?
I agree.
Aaron Donald to have a couple. We might be able to talk about Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill competing for that. I think that's more interesting. I think it fits the spirit of the award. But if we're going to be so committed to the idea of the word value, why not talk about who can bring in the most value, right? I mean,
you're looking at it from a financial perspective.
Well, yeah, it helps, right? I mean, what's the word value supposed to mean otherwise?
Well, to your point, that's why Charger fans are very upset because very soon they're going to have to pay Justin Herbert, right? Yeah, that's why you can bring in Kyle Mack and J.C. Jackson, who's not going to be there anymore. That's why you can do all these things because you have a quarterback like Jalen. Jalen's even on a second round pick contract. Herbert's on a first round pick.
Tua's contract is like $8 million, right? Which is fantastic for the production he's providing, right? And that's another. They were able to bring in Tyreek Hill, right? Because of that, the Chiefs were not able to keep Tyreek Hill. Turns out it doesn't matter. That's an argument for Patrick. But the fact that they were able to bring in Tyreek Hill is a testament to how much value over the contract Tua is providing, and providing 8 times more value than that is Jalen Hurts, right? So that is probably the best argument, because the one where the Eagles are winning a ton of games, that is an uninteresting argument to me. Fine, they're winning a ton of games. Are we going to ignore the 21 other players on the field?
The contract thing is interesting, and I want to, because
how do you bring in CJ Gardner-Johnson to do all the things that he did without that contract?
Correct. And no, you're 100% right.
That's what I'm saying.
The Chiefs won their Super Bowl when Patrick Mahomes was on that rookie contract.
Yeah.
That's right.
Who's helping the team win more than the guy who cost the least?
It's a great point.
Here's the only thing. My last point on this. If you took Jalen Hurts and put him on the Chiefs, because I don't think. Look, I'll be honest with you. I don't think the Chiefs are a really good team. I think they just have an alien unicorn in Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, who should be in every discussion for a defensive player.
Absolutely.
Their kicker, Harrison Butker, has been historically great, and he's been terrible this year. I don't think he's ever really recovered from rolling his ankle week 1 against the Cardinals. Take Jalen Hurts off the Eagles, put him in Kansas City. Now take Patrick Mahomes and put him in Philadelphia with that offensive line, that running game, those 2 wide receivers, Dallas Goedert when he's healthy, and that defense.
So are they going to pay a luxury tax? How's that work?
I'm just saying, just on not finances, just on the play.
Absolutely. Yeah, you put Patrick Mahomes on that Eagles team.
It's not a debate. It's just Patrick might already have 55 touchdowns.
I mean, if Patrick Mahomes is on that Eagles team, they would find a win to win 18 games in the regular season. That's how good they would be.
I gotta tell you, Arif, I love the concept of. I would not, if I was a voter, I probably wouldn't take the financial aspect into it.
Probably not.
But I will say, I now am thinking.
I mean, it is a really different interpretation of the word value.
It is.
I respect that. I respect that.
When is this publishing, Arif?
It should be tomorrow morning. We'll see.
All right. So let's end it here, because I want to read your piece, and I have a feeling we're going to be talking more about it as the season goes on, as you join us each and every week on this show.
Oh, absolutely. Again, it just depends on the kind of voter you are at that point.
Yeah. Well, look, that's going to publish tomorrow at profootballnetwork.com, where you can read all of Arif's work. Again, that's profootballnetwork.com. And Arif is our lead NFL analyst, and he puts out this would not be the first thought-provoking piece he's put out on our platform. So make sure you head over there and check that out. That's dropping tomorrow. Arif, Thanks a lot, buddy.
Real quickly, Arif, send me your brother's Venmo so I can give him money for the power bill. Right?
Okay. And look, we're
Or
saying
a lamp.
we're saying brother, because if it's your hostage taker, that Venmo could be the ransom as well. So you just whichever is easiest. Okay.
Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah. I'll send you a very specific amount in that case.
Thank you. Arif, we'll see you next week, buddy.
All right. Thanks for having me.
See you, buddy.
All right. Real quick before we finish up here with our last segment, which is a lot of people's favorites. Trey, you mentioned earlier that you are the chief trends officer for Caesar Sportsbook. The NFC North, that division is locked up, but you can bet on if the Lions or the Packers are going to make the playoffs over there at Caesar Sportsbook. So make sure you go do that. We got a promo code for you. Going to put it in the comments. It's PFNCZR. PFNCZR. If you're a first-time bettor for Caesar Sportsbook, go and use that promo code on your first bet. It is risk-free up to $1,250. That means place a bet, your first one. If you lose, you get it back as a free bet to use again elsewhere inside of the sportsbook, in addition to the tier credits and rewards credits that you only get at Caesar Sportsbook, which you can use at any Caesars location, especially in Vegas, which they keep emailing me about coming out to, and I'll have to do that one day. So again, that's PFNCZR for Caesars Sportsbook. Promo code is in the comments. Now, Trey, we're going to come up on our third segment here. All right. This is our underdog fantasy Super Smash QB matchup of the week. Let's see what we got first. We got the Battle of the Windy Cities, or better known as the Battle of the Great Lakes. Buffalo on Lake Erie, Chicago on Lake Michigan. Chicago, Buffalo, not real playoff implications here, Trey. Not a huge game for either team, but definitely an interesting quarterback matchup with Josh Allen, who is probably the top thrower / running quarterback in the NFL, and Justin Fields, who this past week had an absolutely remarkable run that they should have given him a touchdown just because of how incredible it was. You know the run I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on these two players? And does Chicago really even have a chance in this one? It's going to be a blizzard or cold. It's
going to be very cold. They have a chance. By the way, just a couple of things to throw out there. Thanks to my good friend Jimmy Carr at Caesar Sportsbook.
Jimmy!
The Bills come in on a 5-game winning streak, and the Bears come in on a 7-game losing streak. So that's not great, right? Yeah. Well, the last time we had a matchup of a team with at least a 5-game winning streak and at least a 5-game losing streak playing, the team on the 5-game losing streak won. That was 2021 when the Texans shocked Tennessee in a rainy day in Nashville, 22-13. The Bills' run defense is not great. And Justin Fields will create problems. And the Bills, by the way, I think are on the road. I believe they have not hit the total yet this year. I think all 7 road games have hit the under. So, this is not all 7 road games have gone under the total this year. And, I think this is going to be an ugly game. The Bills probably find a way to win, but I don't think it's going to be, some sort of blowout that we're looking at. Yeah, and the like we said, the two quarterbacks, when you have Justin Fields, Justin Fields played, and the Bears played the Eagles to a 5-point game this past week. They covered, and the Eagles, sitting with the best record in football any given Sunday. And you wonder how much the weather plays into it. Trey, for me, looking at the temperatures, I think we're going to see a lot of these two quarterbacks running it and keeping it on the ground, which has me excited because I think that's when both of these teams both of these players are at their most exciting. Is that a fair statement? Yeah, and by the way, I sort of misspoke there. The Bills do have a top 10 rushing defense, but if you look at what Justin Fields and company can do with the myriad of ways that they can attack you, they're going to have to manufacture a lot of situations where they can just get as many yards on the ground as they can. Chicago's averaging 187 and that's 20 yards better than the Ravens. So that's what we're talking about here. It's funny. I was on with Chicago radio earlier today, and there were some people that are like, "Oh, you guys are too high on Justin Fields. He still hasn't thrown for 300 yards." I'm like, "Well, who's he throwing to?
Yeah, for real.
Who's he throwing to?" There was some guy named Simba that caught passes from him last week. I thought that was just a character in The Lion King.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was an actual wide receiver in the NFL. Velus Jones has been a disappointment. Matt Eberflus and company have done a great job managing Justin Fields this year. Put him in situations where he can do things that he's good at. And I think this offseason is going to be critical for Fields. Go get him an A.J. Brown like you gave Jalen Hurts. Go get him a Tyreek Hill.
It's working. That model's working.
Yeah, go get him. Go get him a dude, man. And I think you'll see Justin Fields really take off. So, this game is probably going to be ugly. It's going to be a low-scoring affair, I would imagine. And I'm also curious, you talk about a sort of a trap game. The Bills come off that huge win, right? That huge win over the Miami Dolphins in that snow game, and then they've got the Bears this week, right? And then they've got Cincinnati.
Huge game. Huge game.
Like this is the definition of a trap game. You beat the Dolphins in a huge Saturday night showdown after they beat you. It was an amazing comeback. It's the Bears. They've lost 7 straight games. Then you got the Bengals next week. I mean, this is the definition of a trap game for the Bengals.
Great point. And unlike what Bill Belichick said, hopefully the Bills are not already on to Cincinnati because then it really will be a trap game. One more note from me just to put out, as I mentioned with Arif here, I love looking at points given up per minute of possession time. Since the bye week, the Bills are giving up 83% more points per minute this season than they were prior to the bye week. Something to keep an eye on for the Buffalo Bills.
Wow, it's like Von Miller matters.
Yeah, just a bit. Maybe that's why they signed him to a big contract. All right, we have our second and our final. We only got 2 this week. Our second underdog fantasy QB matchup of the week. Let's see what we got. The location graphic for this game says last chance. And I don't know if it's the last chance, but both teams really
for Green Bay it is. It's Green Bay's last chance. They can't afford to lose again.
No, both teams, Green Bay in particular, need a win to keep this going. And Trey, maybe there's some extra motivation here for the Dolphins in this one because the Pro Bowl voting came out. The Pro Bowl rosters, are being announced tonight. And Tua Tagovailoa has been left off the AFC roster. That's not a typo. Tua Tagovailoa has been left off the AFC Pro Bowl roster.
Well,
what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, it's all whatever. And can I guess the 3 quarterbacks from the AFC?
You sure can.
Patrick Mahomes.
That's one.
Joe Burrow.
Could be.
And Justin Herbert.
Ooh, I don't know. Hold on a second. Let me someone
you made the classic lawyer mistake. Never ask a question in court you don't know the answer to.
Yeah, you're not lying. The only thing I do know is Patrick Mahomes made it and Tua did not. The other 2 are in question. But I think the point still remains. Is this something where we've seen players like Tyreek Hill take to the airways to say just ridiculous things in support of Tua?
Yeah.
We mentioned on the show last night the infantilization of the relationship between Mike McDaniels and Tua in the media has become a nauseating thing. Is this something where the team rallies around him because he's been snubbed here in this game?
Look, as someone who covered the Pro Bowl for years and went every year to Hawaii and all that kind of stuff, and I was happy to go. It was great. If this is what motivates the Dolphins and Tua, then they have a much bigger issue.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You got a chance to get in the postseason, right? You got a chance to make the playoffs. You got a chance to go home and win a freaking game. You've lost 3 in a row, all on the road. Like, I understand that there might be some bitter feelings about what's going on with the Pro Bowl vote. But if this is your motivation, like, get new motivation. I can't remember who it was. It was one of those years that the Patriots picked up a linebacker from somewhere, and he was snubbed in the Pro Bowl voting. And he was talking about it in the locker room. Like, I can't believe it happened. Tom Brady went up to him and said, "Do you think I care about the Pro Bowl? I'm here to win Super Bowls, man. I do not care whether you ever go to the Pro Bowl. Get your priorities in line." And so, like, if this motivates the Dolphins, like, short-term, great. Long-term, there's a much bigger issue in Miami if this is the thing that rallies them. They got to win a freaking game.
Well, let's talk about that. We talked a little bit about this game earlier at the top of the show. You said the Packers absolutely cannot take a loss here. And and to be fair, I think we both feel confident saying the Dolphins are probably going to win here. But what do the Packers need to take advantage of? Because we've talked about the Dolphins defense. You've talked about it very accurately.
Much
they are
different
a
at
different
home.
beast on the road. But at home, is this something Aaron Rodgers could take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Dolphins. I mean, look, for Aaron Rodgers to take care of business, right? Let's just be honest about it. It's not going to be throwing it over to Dobbs or Watson. I mean, you'll hit a couple of those. They're going to need to keep that running game going with Jones and Dillon. And Dillon left that game on Monday night. They're going to need to pound the rock. Like, not only does that help their offense, it keeps the other offense off the field, right? This is a game where the Packers need to play keep away. They need to play keep away as much as anything else. And the Dolphins. Let me check this out here. The Dolphins can be exploited on the ground a little bit, but I just, to me, the way to win if you're Green Bay is to make sure you limit the times Tua can throw to Waddle or Tyreek. Like, let's shorten the game. Let's do everything we can. That's the path for success for the Green Bay Packers going forward in this one. Yeah,
and the Dolphins with Tua, they're looking. I think, and you said this, I think they made incredible strides. I think they did better than I thought they would do last week against the Buffalo Bills in the snow in Buffalo. The offense was back to putting up points at a pretty decent rate. The defense still trouble with third down though, Trey. Getting the ball back to Tua in that offense. If they can do that here. The Packers don't have an offense that you have to.
They're not a dynamic offense.
They're not.
The Packers are not they can be an efficient offense. They're not going to. Not this year. They're not going to be a dynamic offense. That ship has sailed.
Yeah, for all the reasons that you brought up with chemistry, and all of those other situations that the Packers are currently facing. So that's gonna do it for our two QB matchups. There was a comment here from Mines_Ow. A viewer on Twitch about putting a team in Toronto. We don't talk about this much. The NFL is playing increasingly more overseas. There was that time the Bills were half a Toronto team and half a Buffalo team. Do you see the league expanding? Is Toronto going to be the first one they go, or is it going to be more like Mexico City / London?
I think they want. Roger Goodell has said on numerous occasions, we want to put a team in London as soon as possible. I don't know logistically, but to me, if they're going to do that, they need to have a whole division over there. Like, you can't have one team have a 6-hour. Like, people are like, oh, it's the same as going to Seattle. It isn't from the East Coast. Like, for example, you fly from New York to Seattle, it's a 3-hour time difference. You fly from London to New York, it's a 5 or 6 hour time difference. And if you fly from London to the West Coast, it's a 9-hour time difference.
Yeah, okay? That's massive.
That's a massive thing. I think they want to do something in London, but to me, if they do that, I think they should establish an entire European division and figure it out that way. But I think London is much more likely to get a team over Toronto or Canada.
Yeah. All right, there you have it. And before we sign off, you have Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen were the three quarterbacks who made it ahead of Tua Tagovailoa.
Oh, Josh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I said Herbert. Absolutely, I meant to say Josh Allen. I apologize there.
Yeah. So that's where we are. Underdog Fantasy, by the way, go download that. Use Perry Como. Use promo code PFN when you play Underdog Fantasy. Play higher, lower, any of their pick'em games. I also use the behavior bets model for that. You can also track that at Pickett Sports. Underdog Fantasy, promo code PFN. Do that now. I'm Brett Yarris. With me, as always, is the great Trey Wingo. And we are here every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, and sometime earlier than that in the Hawaii area. So when that comes up, we'll let you know that one too. But until then, we will see you next week for the NFL's penultimate Week 17. Have a good night, Trey.
Wow. Look at you. Fancy.